The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as Emma Rodriguez pulled her old Honda into a space near the back. She sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, watching the men in tactical vests and baseball caps stride confidently toward the entrance of Pinewood shooting range. Her stomach churned with a mixture of excitement and dread. This was it. After months of saving money from her job as an elementary school teacher, she had finally scraped together enough for a membership and her first real shooting lesson. Emma had always been fascinated by precision sports. As a child, she would spend hours throwing darts at a board her father had hung in the garage, competing against herself to hit the bullseye. Her friends played with dolls while she practiced her aim with anything she could find. But guns were different. Growing up in a household where her mother feared firearms, Emma never had the chance to explore this interest. Now at 32 years old and living on her own, she had decided it was time. She grabbed her purse and walked toward the building, a squat concrete structure that looked more like a bunker than a recreational facility. The sound of muffled gunfire echoed from inside, making her heart race. As she pushed through the glass door, the smell of gun oil and something metallic hit her immediately. Behind the counter stood a heavy-set man with a gray beard, his eyes barely lifting from his phone as she approached. "Help you?" he asked, his tone suggesting he would rather not. "I have an appointment for a beginner lesson," Emma said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Emma Rodriguez." The man sighed and flipped through a clipboard. "Yeah, okay. Lane 7. Your instructor will meet you there. Need to rent a firearm?" "Yes, please. Whatever you recommend for a beginner." He slid a waiver across the counter without looking at her. "Sign this. You ever shot before?" "No, this is my first time." "Figures," he muttered, just loud enough for her to hear. He handed her a pair of safety glasses and ear protection that looked like they had seen better days. "Don't point the gun at anything you don't intend to shoot. Keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. Listen to your instructor." Emma nodded, signed the paperwork, and followed his pointed finger toward a door marked range. As she pushed through, the sound of gunfire became deafening despite the ear protection she quickly put on. The shooting range stretched before her, a long corridor divided into numbered lanes. Men occupied nearly every position, their stances wide and confident as they fired at targets downrange. Not a single woman was visible. She made her way to Lane 7, feeling dozens of eyes on her. 2 men at Lane 6 glanced over, and she caught their smirk before they turned back to their shooting. Her cheeks burned. She set her purse down on the small shelf and waited, trying to appear calm while her hands trembled slightly. "You, Emma?" She turned to find a tall man in his 50s approaching, wearing a range safety officer vest. His expression was neutral but not particularly welcoming. "Yes, that's me. I'm Doug. I'll be walking you through the basics today." He set a black case on the shelf and opened it, revealing a compact pistol. "This is a 9mm, standard beginner weapon, light recoil, easy to handle." For the next 20 minutes, Doug explained the mechanics of the firearm, safety procedures, and proper stance. His instructions were clear, but delivered with the patience of someone explaining something to a child for the 10th time. Emma listened carefully, committing every detail to memory. She noticed he never asked if she had questions, simply moved from one point to the next. "All right, let's see what you can do," Doug finally said, loading the magazine and sliding it into the pistol. He chambered around and handed it to her, grip first. "Remember, finger off the trigger until you're aimed and ready." Emma accepted the weapon, surprised by its weight. She had watched countless videos online, studied grip techniques and breathing patterns, but holding the real thing was entirely different. The gun felt alive in her hands, full of potential energy. She positioned herself the way Doug had shown her, feet shoulder-width apart, arms extended, both hands wrapped around the grip. The target downrange was a simple paper silhouette, 15 yards away. Emma took a breath, aligned the sights the way she had been taught, and slowly squeezed the trigger. The recoil surprised her, bucking the pistol upward, and the sound was louder than she expected despite her ear protection. She had no idea where the shot had gone. "Again," Doug said, his arms crossed. "You're anticipating the recoil. Relax your shoulders." Emma fired again. And again. Each shot felt slightly better than the last as she adjusted to the sensation. By the time she had emptied the magazine, her arms ached and her ears rang. Doug pressed the button to bring the target forward. When it arrived, Emma stared at the paper. Her shots were scattered across the target, with only 2 having hit anywhere near the center ring. Most had struck the outer edges or missed the silhouette entirely. Not bad for a first-timer, Doug said, though his tone suggested otherwise. Most people can't even hit the paper on their first go. You'll get better with practice. Emma felt a sting of disappointment. She had expected to struggle, but seeing the evidence of her poor performance made it real. She glanced to her left where the 2 men from lane 6 were watching. One of them shook his head and said something to his friend that made them both laugh. "Don't worry about them," Doug said, following her gaze. "Everyone starts somewhere. Some people just take longer than others to develop the skill. It's not for everyone." The dismissive tone in his voice was unmistakable. Emma felt something harden inside her chest. It was the same tone her high school basketball coach had used when he told her she did not have the natural athleticism for competitive sports. The same tone her college advisor had used when suggesting she choose a less demanding major. She had proven them wrong before, and suddenly, standing in this male-dominated space with a smoking gun in her hands, she felt that familiar determination rising. "Can I practice on my own after this?" Emma asked. "Sure, if you want. Range time is included in your membership. Just remember the safety rules." Emma nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the scattered holes in her target. "I'll be back tomorrow." Doug raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He probably thought she would lose interest after a few sessions like most beginners. As Emma left the range that day, passing the skeptical stares and barely concealed smirks, she made herself a promise. She would return and she would get better. What none of them knew was that Emma Rodriguez had never walked away from a challenge in her life, and she was not about to start now. True to her word, Emma returned to Pinewood shooting range the next afternoon. The same heavyset man was behind the counter, and this time he looked up with mild surprise when she walked in. "Back already? Most folks wait at least a week." "I want to practice," Emma said simply. He processed her lane reservation with slightly more interest than before, and soon she found herself back at lane 7 with her rented pistol. The range was less crowded during the weekday afternoon. Only 4 other shooters were present, all men, all seemingly absorbed in their own practice. Emma was grateful for the relative privacy. She started slowly, focusing on everything Doug had taught her. Grip, stance, sight alignment, breath control, trigger squeeze. Each shot was deliberate. After emptying her first magazine, she brought the target forward and examined it. The grouping was still poor, but marginally better than yesterday. At least all the shots had hit the paper this time. Over the next 2 weeks, Emma came to the range every single day after school. She would arrive around 4 in the afternoon and stay until closing at 8. She bought her own ear protection and safety glasses, then invested in a range bag. Her teacher's salary did not leave much room for extras, so she packed sandwiches for dinner and made coffee at home instead of stopping at the cafe she loved. The improvements came slowly. Some days she felt like she was getting worse instead of better. Her shots would scatter wildly, and frustration would build in her chest until she wanted to quit. But Emma had learned long ago that mastery required pushing through frustration. She began recording her sessions on her phone, reviewing the footage later to spot mistakes in her form. She watched hours of instructional videos, took notes, and tried to implement new techniques. The other regulars at the range started to notice her persistence. She overheard conversations, bits and pieces that made it clear what they thought. "She's dedicated, I'll give her that," one man said to his buddy. "But some people just don't have the hand-eye coordination for this sport." Another commented, "My wife tried shooting once. Gave up after 1 session. At least this one keeps trying, even if she's not improving much." Emma pretended not to hear. She focused on her target, on her breathing, on incremental progress. After 3 weeks, she could consistently hit the silhouette, though her groups were still spread across a dinner plate-sized area. It was progress, but nowhere near the tight groupings she saw other shooters achieving. One evening, as she was packing up her gear, a woman approached her. She was in her 60s with short silver hair and weathered hands that spoke of decades of hard work. "I've been watching you," the woman said. "I'm Margaret. I run the women's shooting league that meets here on Thursday nights." Emma felt a surge of hope. Finally, someone who might understand. "Is there really a women's league? I haven't seen any other women here. There are 7 of us. Small group, but we're committed. You should join us tomorrow." Margaret's eyes were kind but assessing. "I can tell you're serious about improving. You've got determination, that's clear, but you're making a few mistakes that are holding you back." "What kind of mistakes?" Emma asked eagerly. Your grip is too tight. You're strangling the gun, which is causing micro movements every time you fire, and you're holding your breath instead of controlling it. Come tomorrow at 6. We'll help you out." That night, Emma barely slept. The thought of meeting other women who shared her interest, who might not judge her or dismiss her abilities, filled her with excitement. She arrived at the range 15 minutes early the next evening, her palms sweating despite the cool autumn air. The women's group was already setting up when she arrived. Margaret introduced her to the others: Diana, a nurse in her 40s, Yuki, a college student studying criminal justice, Patricia, a retired police officer, Sandra, who owned a local hardware store, Jennifer, a stay-at-home mom of 3, and Beth, a lawyer who specialized in self-defense cases. They welcomed Emma warmly, without any of the skepticism or condescension she had experienced from the men. "All right, let's see what you've got," Margaret said after the introductions. "Show us your normal routine." Emma set up at her usual lane and began shooting, acutely aware of the 7 pairs of eyes watching her. When she brought the target forward, the familiar scattered pattern stared back at her. She felt her cheeks redden with embarrassment. "Don't be discouraged," Patricia said, stepping forward. "You've got the basics down, which is more than most beginners. Now let's refine your technique." For the next 2 hours, the women worked with Emma, each offering insights from their own experience. Margaret adjusted her grip, showing her how to hold firm without strangling the weapon. Diana taught her a breathing technique that helped her stay calm and focused. Yuki demonstrated a stance modification that improved her balance. By the end of the session, Emma's groupings had tightened noticeably. "That's real improvement," Beth said, examining Emma's final target. "In just 1 session. Imagine what you could do with more practice." "Why did you all start shooting?" Emma asked as they packed up their gear. The answers varied. Patricia had learned as part of her police training, and continued because she loved the discipline. Sandra started for home protection after a break-in at her store. Jennifer wanted to feel more confident and capable. Each woman had her own story, but they all shared a common thread. They had found something meaningful in this sport that went beyond just firing a weapon. "For me, it's about control," Margaret said. "Life throws chaos at you constantly, but out here on the range you control everything. Your breath, your stance, your focus. Every shot is a choice you make." There's something powerful about that. Emma understood exactly what she meant. In her classroom, she often felt overwhelmed by factors beyond her control: district policies, difficult parents, students with complex needs. But here, with a pistol in her hands, she was entirely responsible for the outcome. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. "Can I come back next week?" Emma asked. "You better," Diana said with a smile. "We're here every Thursday. Consider yourself part of the group now." As Emma drove home that night, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. The doubt she had been carrying, the nagging voice that whispered she did not belong in this sport, had quieted. She was not alone. More importantly, she now had mentors who believed she could improve. The following weeks brought steady progress. Emma continued her daily practice sessions and attended the Thursday night group religiously. The women pushed her, encouraged her, and celebrated her small victories. Her groupings grew tighter. Her confidence grew stronger. She began to understand the subtle mechanics of shooting, how a slight adjustment in grip could change everything, how mental state affected physical performance, how patience and persistence mattered more than natural talent. The men at the range began to notice the change. Their dismissive glances turned to curious stares as Emma's targets showed increasingly impressive results. Some asked her questions about her practice routine. Others simply watched from a distance, their expressions unreadable. Emma did not care what they thought anymore. She was too focused on her own journey, too absorbed in the challenge of mastering this skill. Every session brought new insights, new adjustments, new growth. She was becoming something she had never been before, a skilled shooter. And this was only the beginning. 3 months into her shooting journey, Emma had developed a routine that bordered on obsession. She woke at 5 each morning to do dry fire practice in her apartment, using an empty pistol she had purchased to work on her trigger control and sight alignment. After school, she graded papers quickly so she could make it to the range by 4. She had invested in her own 9mm pistol, a used but well-maintained weapon that felt like an extension of her hand now. The women's group had become her second family. They celebrated her progress with genuine enthusiasm. offering tips and encouragement that accelerated her learning. Margaret, in particular, had taken Emma under her wing, sharing wisdom gained from 40 years of competitive shooting. "You've got something special," Margaret told her one Thursday evening as they watched Emma's latest target come forward. The shots were clustered in a tight group around the center ring, barely larger than a fist. "I've trained a lot of shooters over the years. Most people plateau after a few months, but you're still improving at an impressive rate." "I still have so much to learn," Emma said, though pride warmed her chest at the compliment. "That's exactly the attitude that will take you far. The moment you think you know everything is the moment you stop growing." Margaret paused, studying Emma with an intensity that made her slightly uncomfortable. "Have you ever thought about competition shooting?" Emma laughed. "Me compete? I've only been doing this for 3 months. So? Some people compete after 3 weeks. It's not about being the best right away. It's about testing yourself, learning under pressure, and meeting other serious shooters. There's a local match next month. Nothing fancy, just a club competition. You should enter." The idea terrified Emma. Competing meant putting herself out there, opening herself up to judgment and potential failure. But it also excited her in a way she had not felt since she was younger, before life had taught her to play it safe. "I'll think about it," Emma said, which they both knew meant she was already considering it seriously. That night, Emma researched the competition Margaret had mentioned. It was called the Metro Challenge, a monthly match held at a larger range about 30 miles away. The format was simple. Shooters competed in various divisions based on their equipment and skill level. There were categories for beginners, intermediates, and experts. Emma would obviously enter the beginner division. She spent the next week agonizing over the decision. Her students noticed her distraction, and one perceptive 10-year-old asked if everything was okay. Emma assured them she was fine, just thinking about a personal challenge she was considering. That conversation stuck with her. She was always telling her students to try new things, to not let fear of failure stop them from growing. How could she give that advice if she was not willing to follow it herself? She registered for the Metro Challenge 2 weeks before the match date. The moment she hit the submit button, her stomach churned with anxiety. She had committed now. There was no backing out without looking like a coward, at least not to herself. Emma intensified her training. She practiced different scenarios, shooting from behind barriers, engaging multiple targets, speed drills, accuracy drills. The women's group helped her prepare, setting up challenges that mimicked competition conditions. Margaret timed her runs, pushing her to balance speed with precision. "Competition shooting is different from practice," Patricia explained. "Your heart rate goes up. Your hands might shake. You'll feel pressure you've never experienced at the range. The key is learning to perform under stress." Emma discovered the truth of those words during her practice sessions. Even knowing her friends were watching and timing her, she felt her pulse quicken and her focus sharpen in a different way than during normal practice. Sometimes it helped her perform better. Other times she rushed and made mistakes she never made during casual shooting. The night before the competition, Emma barely slept. She kept reviewing everything she had learned, running through scenarios in her mind. What if her gun malfunctioned? What if she forgot a safety rule and was disqualified? What if everyone there was so much better that she looked foolish? The doubts piled up like storm clouds. Her alarm went off at 5:30. The match started at 8 and she wanted to arrive early to walk the course and settle her nerves. She dressed in comfortable athletic clothing, packed her gear meticulously, and made herself eat breakfast even though her stomach protested. By 6:15 she was on the road, the sunrise painting the highway in shades of orange and pink. The range hosting the Metro Challenge was impressive, much larger than Pinewood. Cars already filled the parking lot when Emma arrived at 7. She grabbed her gear bag and walked toward the registration building, her legs feeling strangely weak. Shooters milled around everywhere, checking equipment, discussing strategies, greeting friends. The energy was electric and intimidating. Emma registered and received her competitor number, 47. A volunteer directed her to the safety briefing area where all shooters would gather before the match began. As she made her way through the crowd, Emma noticed something that made her stomach drop. She was one of only 5 women among at least 60 competitors, and most of the shooters, regardless of gender, looked experienced. They had custom holsters, modified pistols, and the easy confidence of people who had done this many times before. "First time?" a voice asked beside her. Emma turned to find a man in his 30s with kind eyes and a friendly smile. His competitor number was in the expert division. "Is it that obvious?" Emma asked. "Only because I remember my first match. I looked exactly like you do right now. Excited and terrified in equal measure. I'm Jason, by the way." Emma: "And yes, that's exactly how I feel. Best advice I can give you, don't worry about anyone else. Shoot your own match. Focus on safety first, accuracy second, speed third. You'll do fine." His words helped, though Emma's nerves remained. The safety briefing covered the rules and course layout. The competition would consist of 4 stages, each presenting different challenges. Shooters would be divided into groups called squads and would rotate through the stages together. Emma found herself assigned to Squad 5, which included 8 other shooters, all appearing far more experienced than she was. When her squad was called to Stage 1, Emma's heart hammered so hard she worried others could hear it. The course of fire required engaging 6 targets from behind a barrier, with a par time of 30 seconds. Emma watched the first 3 shooters complete the stage, their movements smooth and practiced. Then it was her turn. "Shooter ready?" the range officer asked. Emma nodded, her mouth too dry to speak. She drew her pistol and waited for the start signal. The beep sounded. Emma moved, muscle memory taking over even as her conscious mind screamed with anxiety. She engaged the first target, fired 2 shots, moved to the second. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her training held. She worked methodically through all 6 targets, not rushing, focusing on making accurate hits. When the last shot fired, the range officer called, "Unload and show clear." Emma had no idea how she had done. The whole experience felt like a blur. The range officer checked her score. 2 minor penalties for shots outside the scoring zone, but otherwise clean. Her time was slow compared to the experienced shooters, but she had completed the stage safely and legally. It was a start. The rest of the match passed in a similar haze of adrenaline and focused intensity. Emma made mistakes on Stage 2, missing a target completely in her nervous haste. Stage 3 went better, her confidence growing as she found her rhythm. By Stage 4, the final course, Emma felt almost calm. She moved through it with deliberate precision, taking her time, making her shots count. When the match concluded, Emma felt exhausted but exhilarated. She had done it. She had competed. Regardless of her final placement, she had proven something to herself. The scores were posted 2 hours after the match ended. Emma stood at the back of the crowd gathered around the results board, too nervous to push forward. She had watched other competitors checking the rankings, their reactions ranging from satisfied nods to disappointed sighs. Finally, the crowd thinned enough for her to approach. She scanned the beginner division results, her eyes moving down the list. 23 competitors had entered her category. Emma found her name at position 12, middle of the pack. Not impressive, but not humiliating either. For her first competition, it was respectable. She felt relief more than pride. Not bad for a first-timer. Emma turned to find Jason, the friendly expert shooter from that morning, standing behind her. "I was hoping for top 10, but I'll take it," Emma admitted. "Your accuracy scores were actually quite good. What killed you was stage time. You were very deliberate, which is smart for a beginner. But as you compete more, you'll learn where you can push the speed without sacrificing accuracy." He paused, then added, "If you're serious about this sport, you should come to the practice sessions we hold here every other Saturday. It's open to all skill levels. Good way to learn from more experienced shooters." Emma thanked him and made a note in her phone. As she walked back to her car, she analyzed her performance, already thinking about what she needed to improve. The competition bug had bitten her. She wanted to do better next time. The following Thursday, Emma shared her experience with the women's group. They peppered her with questions and offered congratulations on her first match. Margaret seemed particularly pleased. "Now the real work begins," Margaret said. "You've gotten comfortable with basic shooting. Competition is where you learn to perform under pressure. It's a completely different animal." Over the next month, Emma attended the Saturday practice sessions Jason had mentioned. She met serious competitive shooters who shared techniques, discussed equipment, and pushed each other to improve. Emma absorbed everything like a sponge. She learned about different shooting platforms, about game strategies, about mental preparation. These shooters talked about the sport with a passion that matched her own growing obsession. She also met resistance. Not everyone was welcoming. Some of the older male competitors treated her with barely concealed condescension. One man, a regular top finisher named Rick who wore his ego as obviously as his expensive custom gear, made a comment that stung more than Emma wanted to admit. "It's nice that more women are trying the sport," Rick said during one practice session, loud enough for several people to hear. "Gives the rest of us easy wins. Women just don't have the natural aggression needed for competitive shooting. Too emotional, too hesitant." Several people laughed. Others looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Emma felt her face burn with anger and humiliation. She wanted to say something cutting, to defend herself and every other woman shooter. Instead, she bit her tongue and walked away. Arguing would only make her look exactly as emotional as he claimed women were. But his words haunted her. That night, lying in bed, Emma stared at the ceiling and replayed the comment over and over. Part of her wanted to quit, to avoid giving people like Rick the satisfaction of looking down on her. The larger part of her, the part that had driven her to master every challenge she had ever faced, burned with determination. She would prove him wrong. Not with words, but with performance. Emma intensified her training regimen even further. She started running in the mornings to build cardiovascular endurance, knowing that physical fitness affected shooting performance. She practiced her draw stroke hundreds of times each night until the movement was automatic. She studied match videos of top competitors, analyzing their techniques and strategies. She invested in a shot timer and practiced transitioning between targets faster while maintaining accuracy. Margaret noticed the change in Emma's intensity. "Something light a fire under you?" she asked during one Thursday session. Emma told her about Rick's comment. Margaret's expression hardened. "I've dealt with men like that my entire shooting career," Margaret said. 40 years ago, it was even worse. "I was told women shouldn't shoot because we were too weak to handle recoil, too irrational to be trusted with firearms, too fragile for competition. I proved every single one of those idiots wrong." "How?" Emma asked. "By outscoring them. Repeatedly. Nothing shuts up a misogynist faster than losing to the woman he claims is inferior. You want to respond to Rick? Beat him on the scoreboard. That's the only language men like him understand." Emma nodded slowly. Margaret was right. Words were cheap. Results were everything. The next Metro Challenge was 6 weeks away. Emma marked it on her calendar and made it her goal. Not just to compete, not just to improve her personal best, but to place in the top 5 of the beginner division. It was ambitious given that many of those competitors had been shooting longer than she had. But Emma had learned she improved faster under pressure when she had a specific target to chase. Those 6 weeks passed in a blur of practice and preparation. Emma's friends and family started to worry about her single-minded focus. Her mother called one evening and asked if everything was okay, noting that Emma had skipped the last 2 family dinners. "I'm fine, Mom. Just training for something important to me." "Training? For what? You're a teacher, not an athlete," Emma almost explained, then stopped herself. Her family did not know about her shooting hobby. Her mother's fear of guns meant Emma had never mentioned it, knowing it would only cause worry and arguments. Maybe after the competition, when she had something concrete to show for her efforts, she would tell them. Until then, it was her secret. At the range, other shooters began to notice Emma's improvement. Her times were dropping while her accuracy remained high. During one Saturday practice, she ran a stage faster than several intermediate division shooters. Jason gave her a fist bump and a grin. "You're getting scary good," he said. "How long did you say you've been shooting?" "About 5 months now." His eyebrows rose. 5 months? "That's it? Emma, you're progressing faster than anyone I've seen. You should think about moving up to intermediate division soon." The compliment felt good, but Emma was not ready to move up yet. She had unfinished business in the beginner division. Specifically, she wanted Rick to see what a woman could do. He had entered several competitions since his dismissive comment, always placing first or second in the intermediate division. He was skilled, Emma had to admit, but his arrogance was insufferable. He treated beginners, especially women, like they were wasting everyone's time by being on the range. 2 weeks before the competition, Emma had a breakthrough during practice. She was running a stage that required quick transitions between close and distant targets. Something clicked. Her movements became fluid, efficient. Her draw was smooth. Her reloads were crisp. She finished the stage and looked at the timer. Personal best by 3 seconds. Margaret, who had been watching, walked over with an expression Emma had never seen before. It was respect mixed with something that might have been awe. "That was extraordinary. Margaret said quietly. Emma, I think you might have real talent for this sport. Not just competence. Actual talent. You really think so? I know so. I've been competing and coaching for 4 decades. What you just did, that takes most people years to develop. You've been shooting for 5 months. Either you're practicing twice as much as anyone else, or you have a natural gift for this. Probably both. Emma felt a surge of confidence unlike anything she had experienced before. Maybe she really could do this. Maybe she was not just a beginner getting lucky. Maybe she had found something she was genuinely good at. The morning of the second Metro Challenge arrived with gray skies threatening rain. Emma packed her gear with steady hands, surprised by her own calmness. The first competition had been terrifying because everything was unknown. This time she knew what to expect. She understood the format, the pressure, the way her body would respond. That familiarity bred confidence instead of fear. Margaret had driven up separately to watch and offer support. The women's group had sent a flurry of encouraging text messages the night before. Even Jason had texted asking if she was ready to crush it. Emma appreciated the support network she had built. These people believed in her, which made it easier to believe in herself. Registration went smoothly. Emma received competitor number 23 and learned she was in Squad 3 this time. As she walked toward the squad staging area, she spotted Rick near the equipment check. He was holding court with a group of other intermediate shooters, gesturing animatedly as he told some story that had them laughing. Emma felt her determination harden into something cold and focused. The safety briefing covered the same ground as always. 4 stages, each presenting unique challenges. Squad 3 would start at Stage 2, a complex course requiring movement between 3 shooting positions while engaging 8 targets of varying distances. Emma walked through it during the preview period, visualizing her approach, calculating her strategy. When the squad was called to the line, Emma waited her turn with forced patience. She watched each shooter ahead of her, noting their approaches, learning from their choices. Some rushed and made mistakes. Others were too cautious and wasted time. Emma planned her own balance between speed and precision. Shooter ready? The range officer called. Emma stepped to the starting position, her hands relaxed at her sides, her mind clear and focused. She had practiced this exact scenario dozens of times. Her body knew what to do. The start beep sounded, Emma exploded into motion. Her draw was clean, the pistol coming up smoothly to her sight line. She engaged the first 2 targets with controlled pairs, moved to the next position, worked through the middle set of targets with mechanical precision. Her footwork was efficient. Her reloads were automatic. She transitioned to the final position and cleared the last 3 targets before the range officer called time. 31.4 seconds, the timer operator announced. No penalties. Emma felt a thrill run through her. That was a competitive time, even for some intermediate shooters. She had just set a new personal best under match pressure. As she made her pistol safe and stepped away from the line, she caught sight of Margaret at the spectator area. Her mentor was beaming. The rest of the match continued in the same vein. Emma felt like she was operating at a level she had never reached before. Everything she had practiced, every technique she had drilled came together seamlessly. On Stage 3, she had her fastest run yet. Stage 4 was clean with 0 penalties. By the time she finished Stage 1, the final course of the day, Emma knew she had shot well. Maybe the best match of her life. The scores would not be posted for another hour. Emma found a quiet spot to sit and process what had just happened. She felt different than after her first competition. Less relieved, more satisfied. She had executed her plan almost perfectly. Whatever the final results showed, she knew she had performed at her best. Margaret found her and sat down heavily on the bench. That was remarkable. I timed several of your stages. Emma, you just shot times that would be competitive in intermediate division. As a beginner with 5 months of experience. Do you understand how unusual that is? I just did what we practiced, Emma said, though she could not keep the smile off her face. It's more than that. You have a natural aptitude for this sport that very few people possess. Combined with your work ethic, it's going to take you far. Jason appeared a few minutes later, looking impressed. I watched your runs. Emma, you need to seriously consider moving up to intermediate. You're too good for beginner division now. Before Emma could respond, the announcement came over the loudspeaker that scores were posted. Her stomach flipped despite her confidence. Knowing you performed well and seeing it confirmed on paper were 2 different things. The crowd around the scores board was 3 deep. Emma waited at the edge, her heart pounding harder now than it had during the actual shooting. Finally, she pushed through to see the results. Her eyes scanned the beginner division rankings. 3rd place, 2nd place, then 1st place, and there it was, Emma Rodriguez. She had won. Not just placed well, she had actually won the beginner division. Her total score was 15 points ahead of 2nd place. The margin was decisive, not a lucky squeaker. Emma stared at her name at the top of the list, barely able to process what she was seeing. In 5 months, she had gone from never touching a gun to winning a competitive match. The magnitude of that achievement hit her all at once, and she felt tears prick her eyes. Congratulations. Emma turned to find several competitors offering handshakes and compliments. Some were fellow beginners who had competed against her. Others were intermediate and expert shooters who had been watching. Jason gave her a hug that lifted her off the ground. Margaret stood back with her arms crossed and a satisfied smile, like a coach watching her student succeed. "First place in your 2nd competition ever," Margaret said when the congratulations died down. "Emma, I've been in this sport 40 years. I've never seen anyone progress this fast. You're something special." The award ceremony was brief but meaningful. Emma walked to the front when her name was called, received a small trophy and a gift certificate to a shooting supply store, and shook hands with the match director. As she stood there holding her trophy, facing the crowd of competitors, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had earned this. Through dedication, practice, and refusing to accept the limitations others tried to place on her. As Emma packed her gear to leave, she noticed Rick standing near his car. He was loading his equipment with sharp, angry movements. She walked past him toward her own vehicle, the trophy bag slung over her shoulder. "Congratulations on beginner division," Rick said, his tone making it clear the compliment was anything but genuine. "Must be nice to win against people who barely know which end of the gun the bullets come out of." Emma stopped and turned to face him. For a moment she considered Margaret's advice to let her performance speak for itself. Then she decided Rick deserved a response. "I checked the overall scores," Emma said calmly. "My total time across all 4 stages was actually faster than yours by about 8 seconds. So if beginner division is so easy, maybe you should drop back down and see if you can keep up." Rick's face flushed red. Several nearby shooters who had overheard the exchange tried to hide their grins. Emma did not wait for his response. She simply walked to her car, loaded her gear, and drove away. She glanced in the rearview mirror once and saw Rick still standing in the parking lot, staring after her. The drive home felt like floating. Emma kept replaying the day in her mind, hardly believing it was real. When she pulled into her apartment complex, she sat in the car for a long moment looking at the trophy on the passenger seat. This small piece of metal and plastic represented so much more than a single competition win. It represented every morning she had woken early to practice, every evening she had chosen the range over relaxation, every doubt she had pushed through, every dismissive comment she had used as motivation. Her phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. "You've graduated from beginner. Time to register intermediate for next month. No arguments." Emma smiled and typed back, "Yes, coach." That evening, Emma finally told her mother about her shooting hobby. The conversation went better than expected. After the initial shock and worry, her mother asked to see the trophy. When Emma showed her the scores and explained what she had accomplished, her mother's expression softened. "I don't understand this sport," her mother admitted, "but I can see it means something to you, and I can see you're good at it. Just promise me you'll always be safe." "I promise, Mom." Later that night, alone in her apartment, Emma sat at her kitchen table and looked at the trophy again. She thought about where she had been 5 months ago, a woman who had never fired a gun, walking into a range full of skeptical men, struggling to hit a target 15 yards away. She thought about all the people who had doubted her, dismissed her, or outright said women could not compete in this sport. Then she thought about where she was now, a competition winner moving up to intermediate division, respected by serious shooters, mentored by one of the best in the sport. The transformation was not just in her shooting ability, it was in how she saw herself. She had discovered a strength she had not known she possessed, a talent she had never explored, and a passion that filled a space in her life she had not realized was empty. Emma picked up her phone and scrolled through her camera roll to the video she had taken of her first day at the range. She watched herself struggle with the recoil, flinch at the sound and produce that embarrassingly scattered target pattern. She almost deleted it, then stopped. That video was not something to be ashamed of. It was proof of how far she had come. It was evidence that beginnings were supposed to be difficult, that growth took time, and that the person who doubted her most at the beginning was herself. She set the phone down and looked at the trophy one more time. This was just the start. Emma had no intention of stopping at beginner division wins. She wanted to see just how good she could become, how far this talent would take her. For the first time in years, she felt like she was chasing something that truly mattered to her, not something society expected or someone else wanted. The shooting range had become more than a hobby. It had become her proving ground, the place where she tested her limits and pushed past them. And she was just getting started. Moving up to intermediate division changed everything. Emma registered for her first intermediate competition 3 weeks after her beginner division win. Those 3 weeks were filled with different preparation. She was no longer competing against people who were learning the basics. These shooters had experience, refined techniques, and equipment advantages she had not previously considered. Margaret helped her upgrade her gear. Emma had been shooting with a stock pistol that was perfectly adequate for beginners, but lacked some features that would help at higher levels. She could not afford a custom competition gun yet, but Margaret helped her select affordable modifications that would improve her performance. Better sights, a trigger job to smooth the pull, an extended magazine release. Equipment matters more as you move up, Margaret explained as they worked on Emma's pistol at Margaret's home workshop. In beginner division, it's mostly about learning fundamentals. In intermediate, everyone has solid fundamentals. Equipment and strategy become differentiators. Emma also had to adjust her mental approach. The intermediate competitors would not be impressed by her beginner division win. She was starting from scratch again, proving herself to a new group. Some would welcome her. Others would see her as an outsider who had not earned her place yet. The first intermediate competition was at a different range, larger and more professional than the Metro Challenge. Emma arrived early, her stomach tight with familiar nervousness. She checked in, received her squad assignment, and began walking the stages during the open preview period. The courses were noticeably more complex than beginner stages. More targets, more movement, more decision points where strategy mattered. Emma took detailed mental notes, planning her approaches, considering alternatives. Other shooters did the same, and she listened when they discussed their strategies, learning from their experience. When Emma's squad was called to their first stage, she looked around at her fellow competitors. All of them had dozens of matches under their belts. Many had expensive custom gear. One woman, probably in her 50s, noticed Emma's nervous energy and smiled kindly. "First time in intermediate?" she asked. "That obvious?" Emma replied. "I remember my first intermediate match. Felt like jumping into the deep end. I'm Carla, by the way. Been shooting competitively for about 6 years." "Emma, I've been shooting for 6 months." Carla's eyebrows shot up. 6 months and you're already in intermediate? That's impressive, or crazy. Maybe both. Definitely both, Emma admitted with a nervous laugh. When Emma's turn came, she tried to execute her planned strategy. But the pressure of competing against experienced shooters threw her off slightly. She rushed a reload and fumbled it, losing precious seconds. Her final time was respectable but not competitive. She finished in the middle of the pack for that stage, which was better than she had feared but worse than she had hoped. The rest of the match followed a similar pattern. Emma performed adequately but not exceptionally. She made rookie mistakes, taking routes that wasted movement, not planning reloads efficiently, letting her nerves affect her stage times. By the end of the day, she was frustrated but not defeated. The final results showed her in 14th place out of 27 competitors, middle of the pack, exactly where a new intermediate shooter should be. Margaret found her after the scores were posted. "How are you feeling about it?" "Like I have a lot to learn," Emma said honestly. "I wasn't bad, but I wasn't competitive either." "That's exactly right. And that's fine. You're not supposed to dominate intermediate on your first try. Today was about learning what you need to work on." "So what did you learn?" Emma thought about it. "I need to plan my routes better. I need to be more decisive about my strategies. And I need to practice reloads under pressure until they're absolutely automatic." Good analysis. Now you have specific goals to work toward. Over the next 3 months, Emma competed in 4 more intermediate matches. Her progression was steady but not spectacular. She moved from 14th to 10th to 8th to 6th place. Each competition taught her something new. She learned course strategy from watching top shooters. She learned equipment management from her mistakes. She learned mental preparation from pre-match nerves. The women's group continued to be her foundation. They celebrated her progress and helped her analyze her weaknesses. Patricia taught her techniques for staying calm under match pressure. Diana shared nutrition and hydration strategies that affected performance. Yuki, who was also competing in intermediate now, became a practice partner and friendly rival. At Pinewood Range, Emma noticed a shift in how others treated her. The men who had dismissed her as a curious beginner now acknowledged her as a legitimate competitor. Some asked for her advice on technique. Others simply nodded respectfully when they saw her. The transformation was subtle but meaningful. Rick was less respectful. He had placed first in intermediate at the last two competitions Emma attended, and he made sure everyone knew it. When he saw Emma at a Saturday practice session, he made a point of commenting loudly to his friends. Some people think one beginner division win means they're ready for the big leagues. Usually takes a few months of getting humbled in intermediate before reality sets in. Emma ignored him, focusing on her practice. She was getting used to his attitude. Some people needed to put others down to feel superior. Margaret had warned her that ego was common in competitive shooting, especially among men who base too much of their identity on being better than everyone else. But Rick's comments, while annoying, had an unexpected effect. They motivated Emma to work even harder. Every dismissive remark became fuel for another hour of practice. Every skeptical look became a reason to prove herself. Emma had discovered she performed best when she had something to prove, and Rick kept giving her reasons. 6 months into her intermediate division experience, Emma felt she had finally found her rhythm. She understood the level of competition, knew what times were competitive, and had developed consistent strategies that worked for her shooting style. She was placing in the top 5 regularly now, occasionally breaking into the top 3. Then came the regional championship, a major competition that drew shooters from 5 states. It was the biggest match Emma had ever attended. Over 100 competitors registered across all divisions. The prize table was impressive: trophies, gear packages, and even cash prizes for division winners. More importantly, top performers would qualify for the national championship later that year. Emma registered with mixed feelings. Part of her felt ready for this level of competition. Another part worried she was in over her head. She had been shooting for less than a year total. Most regional competitors had years of experience. Who was she to think she could compete with them? Margaret seemed to sense Emma's doubt. The night before the match, she called Emma. "I can hear you overthinking from here," Margaret said without preamble. "Stop it. How do you know I'm overthinking?" "Because I've known you for 9 months, and I know when you're in your own head. Listen to me, Emma. You belong at this competition. You've earned your spot through hard work and talent. Tomorrow, you're going to go out there and shoot your match. Not anyone else's. Yours. Trust your training and let your ability show. What if I fail?" "Then you fail. So what? Failure is part of growth." "But I don't think you're going to fail. I think you're going to surprise yourself and everyone else. Now get some sleep." Emma tried to follow that advice, but sleep came in fits and starts. When her alarm went off at 5, she was already awake, staring at the ceiling and running through mental rehearsals. She got up, went through her morning routine, and drove to the range with the sun rising behind her. The scale of the regional championship was overwhelming. The parking lot was enormous. The registration building was packed. Vendors had set up booths selling gear and ammunition. The atmosphere was part county fair, part serious competition. Emma registered, got her squad assignment, and tried to quiet the butterflies in her stomach. Squad 6 would start at stage 3. Emma walked all 6 stages during the preview period, taking longer than usual to plan her approaches. These courses were more complex than anything she had shot before. Some stages had 12 or more targets with multiple shooting positions and challenging angles. Emma needed to be smart about her strategies. Stage 3 was a nightmare course designed to test both speed and accuracy. 12 targets arranged at varying distances and angles, requiring 3 position changes and 2 mandatory reloads. Emma watched the first 5 shooters in her squad tackle it, noting their approaches and mistakes. When her turn came, she felt surprisingly calm. The enormousness of the competition had somehow made her individual performance feel less pressurized. She was one shooter among 100. Nobody was watching her specifically. The beep sounded and Emma moved. Her draw was smooth, her first shots clean. She transitioned to the second position with efficient footwork, engaged the middle set of targets, executed her reload without thinking about it. The flow state she occasionally found during practice sessions enveloped her. Every movement was automatic, every decision already made during her walkthrough. She cleared the final position and heard the range officer call her time. 48.7 seconds. No penalties. Emma had no frame of reference for whether that was good at this level, but it felt right. She had shot her plan cleanly without rushing or hesitating. As she made her pistol safe and stepped away from the line, she caught sight of Carla, the friendly shooter from her first intermediate match. Carla gave her a thumbs up. The squad rotated through the remaining stages. Emma maintained her focus, shooting each course with the same calm precision she had found on stage 3. Some stages went better than others, but she avoided major mistakes. By the time Squad 6 completed all 6 stages, Emma felt cautiously optimistic. She had not shot poorly. Whether it would be enough remained to be seen. Scores would not be posted until all squads finished, which would take several more hours. Emma found a shaded area to sit and decompress. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her tired but satisfied. She had done her best. That would have to be enough. Margaret appeared with bottled water and a sandwich. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, but good, I think. I didn't choke. I watched some of your stages. You looked confident out there, more controlled than I've seen you in previous matches. That's growth." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching other squads complete their stages. The competition lasted until mid-afternoon. Finally, the announcement came that scores were being tabulated and would be posted in 30 minutes. Those 30 minutes felt longer than the entire match. Emma tried to distract herself by talking with other competitors, but her mind kept drifting to the results board. What if she had placed near the bottom? What if her times were far off the competitive pace? She had felt good about her performance, but feelings were not facts. When the crowd started gathering at the scores board, Emma's stomach clenched with anxiety. She waited at the back again, watching people react to the posted results. Some cheered. Some shook their heads in disappointment. A few seemed shocked. Emma finally pushed forward to see the intermediate division results. Her eyes scanned down from 10th place, then 9th, 8th, 7th. She found her name at 6th place. The top 10 of intermediate division at a regional championship. Emma stared at her name, hardly believing it. She had competed against experienced shooters from 5 states and finished in the top 10. Then she noticed something else. Her overall time was only 12 seconds behind first place. The competition at the top had been incredibly tight. The difference between first and 6th place was less than 20 seconds across 6 stages. She had been competitive with the best shooters in the region. "Emma!" She turned to find Jason pushing through the crowd. His face split in a huge grin. He had competed in expert division. 6th place. At a regional. After shooting for less than a year. Do you understand how insane that is? Before Emma could respond, Carla appeared and gave her a hug. "I saw your times. You shot an amazing match. Congratulations." More congratulations followed from competitors Emma barely knew. The shooting community, she was learning, celebrated excellence regardless of who achieved it. Well, most of the community did. Rick pushed past the crowd, glanced at the results board, and scowled. He had placed 3rd in intermediate. Emma had not beaten him, but she had gotten close. Very close. Only 7 seconds separated them. "Lucky day," Rick muttered as he walked past Emma. She almost let it go. Then she remembered every dismissive comment, every skeptical look, every time someone had suggested she did not belong. She was tired of letting it pass. "Rick," Emma called out. He stopped and turned, his expression challenging. "It's not luck when it happens consistently," Emma said calmly. "I've placed top 5 in my last 4 competitions. Today I placed 6th at a regional against much more experienced shooters. That's not luck. That's skill, and I'm just getting started." Rick's face reddened, but he did not respond. He simply turned and walked away. Several nearby competitors who had overheard the exchange looked impressed. One of them, an older man who had placed 4th, walked over to Emma. "Good for you for standing up to him. Rick's talented, but he's got an ego problem. Been waiting for someone to put him in his place." I'm Tom, by the way. Been shooting competitively for 15 years. If you shot this well after less than a year, you're going to be dangerous once you have more experience. The awards ceremony was held an hour later. Emma walked to the front when the top 10 intermediate shooters were called. She shook hands with the match director, received a certificate and a small trophy, and stood for a photo with the other top finishers. As she held her trophy and smiled for the camera, surrounded by shooters who had once seemed impossibly skilled, Emma realized something profound. She belonged here, not as a curiosity or a beginner getting lucky. As a legitimate competitor with real ability. The drive home was contemplative. Emma thought about her journey from that first terrifying day at Pinewood Range to standing on the awards platform at a regional championship. Less than a year had passed, but she was a completely different person now. The doubts and insecurities that had plagued her that first day still existed, but they were quieter now, drowned out by evidence of her own capability. Her phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. "Proud of you. You've exceeded every expectation. Now the question is, how far do you want to take this?" Emma thought about that question as she drove. She had started shooting as a hobby, something to challenge herself. It had become much more than that. She had discovered an aptitude she never knew she possessed. She had found a community that, with some exceptions, welcomed and supported her. She had proven that determination and dedication could overcome inexperience and doubt. How far did she want to take it? The national championship was in 4 months. Qualification standards were high, but her regional performance had earned her a spot if she wanted it. That competition would feature the best shooters in the country, people who had been competing for decades, Olympic-level talent in some cases. The old Emma, the one who walked into Pinewood Range 10 months ago, would never have considered it. That Emma was content to play it safe, to avoid situations where failure was possible. But Emma had changed. She had learned that growth only happened outside comfort zones. She had discovered that the only real failure was not trying. By the time she pulled into her apartment complex, Emma had made her decision. She pulled out her phone and texted Margaret back. "I want to qualify for nationals. Tell me what I need to do." The response came quickly. "That's my girl. Training starts Monday. It's going to be brutal." Emma smiled. Brutal was fine. She had been through brutal before and come out stronger. She went inside, set her trophy on the shelf next to the one from her first beginner division win, and looked at them both. 2 trophies representing one journey. A journey from doubt to confidence, from beginner to competitor. From someone who was dismissed to someone who could not be ignored. She thought about all the people at the range that first day, who had looked at her with skepticism. The ones who thought a woman, especially one who had never shot before, had no business trying to learn this sport. She thought about Rick and his dismissive comments about women lacking aggression. She thought about every obstacle and doubt she had faced. Then she thought about where she was now and where she was going. The people who doubted her had done her a favor, really. They had given her something to prove, and Emma had discovered she was very good at proving people wrong. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a group text from the Women's Shooting League. Diana had sent a photo of Emma from the awards ceremony with the caption, "Our girl representing. So proud." The messages flooded in. Congratulations, pride, excitement for what came next. Emma read them all, feeling grateful for the support system she had built. She had learned that success was never individual. Behind every achievement were people who believed in you, pushed you, and celebrated with you. Emma opened her training calendar and started planning. 4 months until nationals. That gave her about 120 days to refine every aspect of her shooting, to get faster without sacrificing accuracy, to eliminate the small inefficiencies that cost fractions of seconds, to prepare mentally for competing against the absolute best in the sport. It would be hard. She would have early mornings and late nights. She would sacrifice social events and leisure time. There would be frustration and setbacks. But Emma had learned something important over the past year. She was capable of far more than she ever imagined. The woman who walked into Pinewood Range 10 months ago could never have imagined finishing 6th at a regional championship. That woman would have been terrified at the thought of competing nationally, but Emma was not that woman anymore. She had transformed herself through dedication, practice, and refusing to accept the limitations others tried to impose on her. She had discovered a talent that had been dormant her entire life, waiting for the right challenge to awaken it. She had found her proving ground. As Emma sat down at her kitchen table and began outlining her training plan for the next 4 months, she felt something she had never quite felt before. Certainty. Certainty that she belonged in this sport. Certainty that she had the ability to compete at the highest levels. Certainty that the journey from doubt to excellence was one she was meant to take. The people who doubted her at the range had been wrong. She did have what it took, and she was going to show them, show Rick, show everyone, exactly what a determined woman with real talent could accomplish. The story was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning.